Good morning. It's Monday, September 16th, 9 a.m. This is Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. First item, I'd like to call the meeting, well, I'm calling the meeting order, and first item is I'd like to review the agenda.
To approve is presented.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. I will note that Josh from Klinger is coming up to give us a brief update on the project. He was running a little bit behind. He thought he might be here at 9:30, so we'll try to get him in with that update at some point in the agenda. Item 3 is discussion of possible action to approve claims dated September 16th, 2024 in the amount of $237,231.39, excuse me.
So moved.
I have a motion by Scott.
Second.
Second by Kurt. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, item number 4 is an informational presentation with the Iowa Obesity Program leveraging activities and partnership. That's a mouthful. To address obesity with LEAP Program Assistant Nora Dwyer. Good morning, Nora.
Good morning, thank you, appreciate it.
Nora, if you can pull that speaker down so
Yeah.
folks at home can hear. Sometimes we get comments they can't hear well.
A really tall person ahead of me, wasn't there?
Thank you. Well, probably just cleaning.
I don't think I have
guessing.
to stand on a box or anything here, I don't think yet. So anyway, thanks for letting me be here today. And as Jeff said, my introduction is that it is a very long acronym that we have here called LEAP, which is a new program that's being offered by the Iowa State University. And then I work for the Muscatine County Extension Service and have been on board since June. So before I go into a little bit about what LEAP is about, I just want to, so that you know a little bit more about me. My husband Rich and I have been in Muscatine for about 30 years, and I've been involved in a lot of different health and wellness programs. Worked for the Muscatine Community Y, was involved in the medical field. I was a physical therapist assistant and also a massage therapist. And then had a couple injuries and started getting involved with the Muscatine Community Food Pantry, as it was called at that point. So that may have been when, I first made contact with some of you folks, and we moved during that time, we moved it from the county building over to MCSA, and MCSA included the food pantry as part of their programming. So I got involved in some of the things related to food security and what was going on with some of our, less fortunate folks and that lower economic population. So I had some connection there. And then a couple of years later, during that auspicious year of 2020, when I was asked to manage the food pantry. And little did I know that was not going to be some cush retirement job. It ended up being a pretty involved year of providing food bags to, I think we got up to almost 300 households that in collaboration with the Salvation Army and United Way, we provided those food bags to folks that either couldn't get out or, had some issues. So it gave me a real look at what was happening in the community as far as people getting access to food. A couple years later, I've been asked now to serve in this role. And really the idea, and I'm not real experienced at this, so I'll try to make it work here on the technology. So the purpose of HOP, which again, they love their acronyms, so High Obesity Program. So this is from CDC, Center for Disease Control. And the idea is to provide funds through land-grant universities. And Iowa State is our land-grant university. And we have our extension service, which provides outreach services in 4 areas: human services, ag, natural resources, and various aspects of the extension service. So if you aren't familiar with that, and I know Eric is, but the Extension Service provides that link between the local people, whatever that avenue is, and university science-based practices. So the HOP program, which started from CDC, is really designed to focus on food and nutrition and also physical activity. So going forward, let me see if I can do this. So the Iowa LEAP counties, there are 6, and they were chosen because all of those counties have an obesity rate of over 40% for their population. The statewide average is 36%. So these counties were chosen. There are 3 on the eastern side and 3 on the western side because of that percentage. They are using BMI, which is body mass index. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian, but I do know a little bit about this field. BMI is not necessarily, some people will argue with it. It's simply a marker that we can use. There have been studies that show that when we look at high BMI rates, that also typically leads into other issues, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, which in our county in particular is pretty significant. And we've got some numbers to show that. I would just say, I think most of you, and with the community needs assessment coming up pretty soon, and and this body is charged with the county health assessment, and I think those things are coming up pretty soon. I think you have a meeting where you're going to be talking about that and what things that they feel is necessary and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but through the years, there's been a decision that, which no arguments with that you have to pick what are you going to work on for the next 2 years. So I think the timing of this comes up pretty conveniently to talk about this before you get into that conversation. So leading from those 2 strategies, the nutrition and the physical activity, the short-term outcomes, which this is a 5-year renewable grant, and the folks at Iowa State are responsible for submitting the grant to CDC. We're definitely providing the local contacts. So on the nutrition side, we're trying to increase access to healthier foods and doing that by 2 means, either finding ways to maybe possibly promote policies that give folks guidelines of what are healthy foods. And the second is fruit and vegetable voucher programs. I don't know, I would imagine most of you are familiar with SNAP, the supplemental nutrition program that's available. There are voucher programs that are available through the state, the farmers market vouchers and the senior citizens food vouchers that are also available. Those are not used as much as we would like to see them used, so that's an area where we could possibly provide some assistance to allow people to use those more effectively. On the physical activity side, that is where we would like to see policies or plans also within the community design to increase access to physical activity. I can bore you with a bunch of statistics and figures about where we are in our county, and if you want that information, I can certainly give that to you. But I think it boils down to how easily is it for people in our, not just Muscatine, but throughout the entire county to gain access to physical activity when they want to. And so along with this is to connect pedestrian, bicycle, or transportation network to everyday destinations. Some of this has been done before, and you might be asking, if you guys have been here in Muscatine, we've been familiar with the Blue Zones program, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So this first strategy, and I'll go through this because we're still in the effort to try to obtain as much information as we can from citizens about what is their access to food. Can they get access to healthier foods, and where do they find that? And that also plays into their healthcare options. And do they have access to a provider, which I think that was an issue in a previous community health assessment, that we were trying to increase the number of providers in the county. So this is what we're trying to work on this first year. And again, I came through about halfway through the year, so we're still in the efforts of doing this. So we have an assessment that's out that will still be available through the middle of October. We have QR codes or links to that, and again, I can provide those to you as a follow-up if you'd like to see that. I do have also a handout for you guys that just has the overview, which is those first couple slides. So that's a little bit of what our goals are and what we're looking for. So on the physical activity strategy, this again is to try to work on working with city, county folks to provide some of those safe routes. I think overall, Muscatine, the city, is also working on their comprehensive plan to look at how things are going to go for the next 10 years. So again, I've been in on some meetings there and just talking about how this grant might, my work might dovetail with theirs. The thing that I think I'm finding with this is that we have an ability to connect with people who are much smarter than me, who understand community design, and also have access to various grants that might be offered through Department of Transportation or other larger grant options to maybe help with some of the trail development that's happening. But it really boils down to communication and trying to know what everybody's doing so that we can all work towards the same goal. So here are some options that we can work on. Again, we're doing some assessments. We're doing some walkability assessments to look at some of the main trails to see, is it going the way that the city folks want it to go? So when it comes down to success, how do you measure success? And it's a long-term project. These are some of the things that have happened in some of the other states. Arkansas and West Virginia are two of the states that this has been in. North Carolina, Oklahoma are two other states that this program has already been used in. Again, the CDC money comes down through to the land-grant university and then is rolled out to the extension services in those states. So what they found that during this time, that the initial phase of this HOP grant, they've been able to increase access to healthier foods for 1.5 million people, increase activity for 1.6 million people, and leverage over $7.5 million to support and sustain their efforts. So they are seeing some changes. Now, you might ask, which I asked in the first couple of weeks when I started this, okay, did we change the health markers? And the thing is that this is, again, I think it's like planting a tree. I don't know whether I'll see my success in my lifetime, but it's that idea of if we can try and if we can make some changes in people's health, I think that's going to be a worthwhile goal. Whoops. Let me go back here a couple. Sorry. I think I messed up here. Sorry, guys.
It switched from you.
Yeah.
Cursor is down on the bottom one.
Okay.
You just hit enter, probably go back into your, whoop,
There.
there you are.
There it is.
Now you can just go forward to the slide.
My thumb got too fast there. So here are 3 other states that they saw some additional success. Alabama and Kentucky saw some improvements in eating, shopping practices, increased fruit and vegetable consumption, identified important considerations for in-store marketing to help folks in rural food stores encourage healthier purchases. So
Nora, is this
Yeah.
strongly correlated with any kind of an income level, the obesity levels we see?
yes, yeah, and there's definitely some numbers that are showing that based on economic levels, income levels, there's but it's really difficult, Nathan, to break down like, are people in this economic level more likely to have obesity or some of these health issues, or where is it? From what I've been able to understand from our state team is that really obesity runs the gamut, from high income to low income. There may be different reasons that they're seeing obesity. Some of the things that I know I've heard from a lot of folks about, well, we've got a bunch of poor people that are eating crap, right? I, subjectively, in my opinion, I don't know that that's true. Having worked with the food pantry and the folks at Salvation Army. I think those people are trying really hard to have a healthier options available to people. We've also seen studies that show that it doesn't matter if people are consuming fresh foods or frozen or canned foods, those still have the same nutritional value. It would be nice to have fresh tomatoes instead of canned tomatoes, but you can use them the same. So from a nutrition standpoint, there's not much difference. Personal preference may be there. I think from also the work that I've done with the food pantry, it's that thing of what do you do with zucchini? Some folks aren't really sure, what to do with it, how to use it. But and also, offering things to them, just my personal practice, we roast a lot of vegetables. We have a really nice oven. I have a great knife. I know a nice roasting pan. Not everybody has an operating oven. Do they have a good knife that they know how to use? Do they have anything more than a hot plate and a crock pot to cook in?
Right.
So there's some things like that I think are limiting some pockets of population. Is just what I'm seeing. The thing that we do have is access to the Iowa State experts. And I think that's what I like to say is that I feel like I can be a bridge between what we need locally and the experts at Iowa State or technical advisors with the CDC, that if we have a project or we have an area that we feel we really want to focus on, let's try to figure out how to solve that problem with, it's not just Nora Dwyer's opinion about what we should do with this. The other thing that I've been impressed with this is that it's not to say, and Jeff and I were talking earlier about it, it's not somebody's opinion about whether keto or paleo or vegan or vegetarian or whatever is a better diet. It's that healthier foods, and kind of breaks down to that idea of, have you had an apple today? Have you taken a walk today? Let's go into the simplicity of things and how can we encourage people to be either more active somehow and have access to a way to get active or that's safe, and how can we encourage people to eat healthier foods, which I think everyone can agree on the fact that probably fruits and vegetables are healthier than potato chips and Twinkies, when we start comparing things. So that's kind of what this whole thing boils down to.
With this being connected with Iowa State and that, is there any leg of this program that promotes gardening for one's own behalf? There certainly should be.
Yeah, great question, Scott. So yeah, with the Iowa State, even locally, the Extension Service, we have a Master Gardeners program. And that group has been very, very active in the previous years to provide any kind of oversupply to the food pantries. And there are some grants that are available to that. So there is the Art of Gardening that's coming up in March. And I'll be speaking to that group to talk about how maybe we can connect things a little bit. There has been an effort in the past, it's called, I think it's, if I get the name wrong, it's Grow a Row. So the idea is whether you're a master gardener or just a consumer gardener and you've got a home garden, plant an extra row for the hungry is what that's called. We have promoted that in the past, but not so much lately. I think, again, there are a lot of programs that have been out there that have sort of started on this. And again, I'll reference Blue Zones. And I imagine everybody heard of Blue Zones when it started up a few years back here in Muscatine. And it was great while it was here, but Wellmark's funding dried up. They didn't have we didn't have a representative. And talking to the Chamber of Commerce people, in order to be a Blue Zones community, you really had to follow those parameters. And what did you get out of being a Blue Zones community? Did people come here because they're like, oh, you've got a little stamp on your community, I want to go visit. So I think it's that thing of what do you want? And that really is where it comes down to Muscatine County. What do we want? What do we want to be? Within this, and prior to me starting the job, Heidi Hoffman, who is our extension director, she assembled a group. We've got about 40 people who are on our coalition. They're representatives of the city. Jen Kraft from Unity is on it. We have a variety of folks that are affiliated with the fitness facilities here in town. And that group decided to focus on Muscatine first. But honestly, we have West Liberty, we have Wilton, we have Stockton, some of these other communities that are out there that need that kind of support too. But we wanted to focus on Muscatine first with the largest population base to try to get some of these projects up and going and to kind of get our wheels beneath us. So, but back to Blue Zones, I think there were some good things that were started. A few more people started walking. We talked about healthier choices in restaurants. And the Master Gardeners, they really started, upping their game in terms of getting extra food supplies to the pantries in town at that point. So I think that started, but then it started to wane a little bit because there really wasn't anybody to focus on it. And I hope that's what my role will be, is that I can be that person that if somebody asks about it, again, I'm not an expert, but I think I'll be able to find the people who do know the answers. And I appreciate the expertise of Iowa State and the folks who are in community development. They're in behavior change. They're dietitians. So this isn't, again, somebody saying, I've got a certificate in nutrition and I'm coming and throwing this out to people. So
One thing that I think is important for people to know is many of that I've talked to, well, they've never gardened before. They don't even begin to know what to do.
sure.
And of course, you can learn a lot from just being on the internet and looking, but if you have specific questions about X, whatever X might be, out at the extension office, you can walk in and get your questions answered
Yes.
just almost immediately. And there's no dumb questions. I mean, you're having trouble with whatever you're having trouble with, and just ask. Or surely most people actually know people that garden that just ask the question, I'm having trouble with whatever, and they're more than happy to help you.
Yes.
For many situations, people said, well, they don't have a place, they don't have a spot to do this. And I think if a person was really proactive in that and talk to some people, might be surprised what you come up with.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a huge plot. I mean, it can be as little as 5 by 10 or 10 by 10 or whatever. But one thing you find out when you start doing that is your garden's never big enough, because it always keeps getting bigger for whatever reasons.
Right.
You always say, well, let's try this, let's try that. Next thing
Yeah.
you know, you got yourself a handful, and you got all kinds of good things happening.
Right. Yeah, I think so, and I think there's definitely a focus on that and providing people, and in that March meeting, it's called the Art of Gardening, so I think there'll be some information will be released on that. So if anybody is interested in learning more about how to garden, that'll be available, and definitely the Extension Service has lots of resources as far as starting garden. I think one other area of this is also food waste. I think folks don't realize how much food they either, I think I'm gonna have, 3 salads this week and end up at the end of the week and you've got a big container of salad greens and you haven't used it. And so that's another pretty relevant topic of how to use the food that you do have and how to use it effectively. A couple programs we have through the Extension Service that I don't think get enough attention is the Buy, Eat, Live Healthy. And that's a really great program for folks who qualify for SNAP. It's I forget the exact number of weeks of the curriculum, but we have a specialist in our office. She works in both Muscatine and Louisa County. She's a shared employee. And so she offers those classes for folks who, if they qualify for SNAP and they want to learn how to, budget their food dollars better, if they want to know how to, what recipes that they can use, all those kind of things are available. So there's lots of things that we can do, and there's all these existing programs. And I think that's the thing that I'm finding is that let's make use of the resources that we have and use those effectively and get those out to everybody rather than coming up with a brand new program with things. So I'm just gonna go ahead. I think I've got a couple. Whoops, maybe not. Thought I had one more slide. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't get there. Okay. All right. We're just gonna go there. I didn't have the slide for it. Just two more things that I have for you is one role is like, why does this even matter? It makes logical sense that everybody to be healthy would make sense, right? Would be a beneficial thing for our county. There was an article that the woman, she's the executive director of the Iowa Healthiest State Initiative, wrote. Jamie Harple is her name. And she wrote an article it was the April issue of the Des Moines USA website. And one of the things she focused on was, what does this cost our workplace? And very interesting number. I'm not quite sure how they figured this, but they're talking about the amount of dollars that go, which she used it as a reduction in economic activity because of obesity and the related chronic diseases to that issue. And she was saying that in 2022 alone, 31,400 fewer adults worked because of the effects of obesity, and 5,500 premature deaths occurred annually because of the disease. And then there's, again, I can bore you with a bunch of statistics and it can sort of shock you into, we got to get something done. But one number she used was that approximately $6,500 a year per worker is what obesity costs us. And I think we need to put that in dollars, $6,500, well, how much does that? But you do the math and it's staggering, what that impacts. And it's not just that folks are overweight, it's that there are some chronic conditions that we know are tied to obesity. So the last thing I'd ask is, why am I here and what am I gonna ask of you folks? So first of all is to be a partner in what we're doing, and if there's something that comes up related to wellness or that you feel is related to this grant, I hope you'll give me a call and let me know, and I'd love to be part of the conversation. And the other thing is that, we'll keep you all informed of things that we're doing. The big thing that we're doing on October 2nd, and that was what my next slide was going to be, but it's called the Healthiest Walk, State Walk. And just 2 weeks ago, Mayor Bark signed a proclamation designating October 2nd as Healthiest Walk Day for our community here in Muscatine. And everyone is encouraged to get out for at least 30 minutes that day to walk. We would invite any of you as community leaders to join us that morning between about 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and we're going to try to get as many folks, some of the business leaders and Mayor Bark and some folks possibly from the health department and so forth, to kick off the day with a walk and to show folks that anybody can get out and walk for 30 minutes or try to be active. If they're in a walker and they can't walk for 30 minutes at a time, we hope they'll do it in increments and get out and walk with their families. Several of the schools are signed up for a walk. I think Mulberry School is doing some kind of a fundraiser for the first and the second for their school. But the idea is through the Healthiest State Initiative to get everybody active for one day. And we hope this will be an annual event that we can, all look forward to. That if nothing else, everybody gets out and walks for 30 minutes together as a community around this time of the year. So we hope you'll join us for that. So if you have any other questions or can inform me about anything. No? Great, awesome. And I do have a handout I'll pass on to you all. And I can send this as an email too if you'd like that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you need anything?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh, okay.
Thank you for coming and sharing that with us, Nora.
Thanks a
We
lot.
look forward to the efforts and some success.
Great. grab my USB drive.
Okay, item number 5 on is items with County Engineer Brian Harowski. Item 5A is discussion possible action to approve the purchase of one 2025 light-duty truck.
Good morning. You guys should have had the summary of quote there in your packet. This is a foreman's pickup, so usually we buy one about every other year or so. We have 2 foreman pickups. Our plan is to trade the oldest pickup, so that's why you see down there the trade is a 2012 Ford. The current foreman's pickup, he took really good care of it. It's just getting up there in miles. So it'll kind of go into the more general maintenance fleet that guys take out just to a job site. So it won't get near the miles put on it in the future.
So will you have a vehicle at the end of the trail that we dispose of? Or
Yes, it'll most likely be that 2012.
2012?
I'm getting a little hesitant anymore putting trade numbers in there because also dealers are getting a little hesitant to give us trade numbers because things are taking a long time to get, unfortunately. So the last pickup that we traded, we were told 4 months, and 7 months later, 8 months later, we got the pickup. So a lot can change. But yes, we intend to trade a truck.
Yeah, the used vehicle market is pretty strong. You should be buying on it, so. Okay.
I'll move.
I have a motion by Danny. Second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed the same? Motion carries. Anything else, Brian?
I wanted to give a project update. Our Moscow Road paving job, that's with Manats. All their subs are in right now, pretty much working on everything, prepping for paving. They're working on bridge approaches. Iowa Bridge and Culvert is their culvert subcontractor. They're working on a box culvert extension. And there's a lot of moving parts going on up there right now, so we're happy to see them in and working. Out on Trolley Ave, our bridge that's out there, that's Iowa Bridge and Culvert. The old bridge is removed, and hopefully this week they plan to drive some piling. So that's moving along. And then we're working on closing out our, and these projects are complete out in the field. We're just working on the documentation portion of closing them out. And that's the North Isaac Bridge, and then also our Vale Ave patching project is complete as well. And then our 120th Street Bridge, we had some issues with some multiple fiber optic cables there. One is in the process of getting relocated hopefully this week, and then the other is later this month. So we're hopeful that it continues that way. So yeah, that's what I have for a project update.
Is Vale open to the public, to traffic?
Yes.
Is, okay, I haven't been up there over the weekend, so I wasn't sure. But
Yes.
very good.
Thank you.
Do
Thanks,
we want to
Brian.
do the update for Josh here since it's kind of on the same topics?
I don't have an updated schedule for you guys. I'm hoping to have one by the end of this week with their meeting, but I can maybe email that out to you guys. Feature 2 is wrapped as of, well, I think it was Friday or Saturday. They finished up the anchor trench, so they have a few punch list items yet to remain. They have some riprap to put on the downstream side of that, but they're not gonna be able to do that until they have a 28-day on both the anchor trench and the cement infill on that hydroturf, so they can't put riprap on that quite yet. And then they have a few just like site cleanup type items for the landowner there that they still have to address. But, so that was the overtopping structure, and then feature 1, they have about, I think at the last meeting, they were like in the 98% of material hauled to the levee. So they have most of the material there. Now it's just finished grading, and then we have to do compaction testing to make sure that is compacted on the levee. And then they also have to do the reshaping at Deep Lakes to make sure that looks the way that Muscatine County Conservation wants that to look. So that's still some items there. And then they also have to do, there's 2 culvert or gravity drain abandonments through the levee, so they still have to do those at some point, but I think that's gonna be more like maybe mid-October. So I think at this point, I'm thinking the entire project is going to be wrapped up by the end of October. So
I think the original schedule is you thought feature 2 would be done sometime near the end of September and then
Yep.
end of October for feature 1.
Yeah.
So looks like we're pretty much
right on track
target.
schedule-wise. They do have more. I mean, I think they had until end of November for the levee stuff, but I think they'll be done well in advance of that. So
Provided the weather holds out, right?
Yeah,
It's always-
yeah.
Always.
It's looking decent for them though. So they've had some good luck here. I mean, they didn't early, but they do now. So and then anytime, I mean, well, I don't know how to say anytime because Brad is filling that property down at 52 with the overtopping, but maybe we could schedule some like spring meeting down there to kind of walk around site, see what it looks like and stuff now, because he's filling that up for duck hunting, so I don't know how, I mean, it'd still be accessible, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. But anytime you guys wanna come look, just let me know and I'll try to work it out with Brad, so we can get you to come down and look at it.
Any questions?
I think that's good. I'm not sure 100% when they're gonna take out that traffic control, but I think this Friday would be a good time to sort that out. Ahead of time, so.
And it sounds like the roads fared pretty well, we think. and-
The last I checked up on it last week, it held up very, very well. So knock on wood,
Yeah.
it continues that way.
They got lucky again with the weather, not hauling too much when it was wet, so.
Okay,
Alright, thanks guys.
thank you. Okay, item number 6 are items of Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furness. 6A is to review a special use permit granted by the Muscatine County Board of Adjustment on September 6, 2024.
The special use permit, excuse me, that was granted was actually tied to that Manats paving project. It was a temporary concrete plant at the Wendland Quarry site in support of that project. So obviously that was a very good site for a temporary concrete plant. A lot of heavy traffic coming and going already from that site, so that was rapidly improved with little concern.
And that was to serve the Moscow Road project, correct? So it's a very close even proximity, so it's a
Really ideal for a lot of reasons.
opportunity there. Yeah.
And that, as you know, that's a special permitted use in the A1 district, which is what that property is zoned. It's an existing special use permit for mining quarry operation. So able to use a lot of the infrastructure that's there, the water supply that's there. So,
Item B is discussion of possible action to approve resolution 09-16-2401, approval of combined preliminary and final plat of the Hale Street Addition subdivision.
okay, Hale Street Addition is a replat. If you recall, just recently we went through the vacation process of a number of lots of what was commonly referred to as Chatham Addition. The roadways that were platted, the lots, the utility easements were all vacated. And so they're back now with a replat of that for Hale Street Addition. That basically it's a 5-lot subdivision, but it only provides 2 buildable lots and then three outlots. So 2 buildable lots will go in at the end of Hale Street, which was where Hale Street ended and Chatham Circle had started. Then a couple large outlots that are just being purchased by adjoining landowners for buffering purposes. Outlots by our code are not buildable lots at this time. Everything's been rezoned to R2 residential, so it's all one big consistent zoning district. And then there was a sliver, Outlot C, you'll see, that was kind of a cleanup when they saw how lot 34, where the building, there was a little, maybe a building that was a little too close to a property line, and so they replatted an outlot to give that property owner a little bit more buffer between the other lots. I will point out that as part of this replat, they are finishing the end of Hale Street. For years, that has just been a dead end where the concrete dropped off. We talked to them in the very beginning about planning to install a subdivision ordinance approved cul-de-sac. So we have the specifications there as part of this plat. I've talked to the developers and we will be going out and actually looking at, that's one of the things we've talked about. We need to do a better job of inspecting the actual roads that are approved. I kind of talked to Brian, some of his staff got up to speed on how road construction works and what specs are. So we're we're gonna look at that when they put that cul-de-sac, but that'll provide a proper turnaround for school buses, fire, emergency service, garbage trucks, and not just a dead end on that.
And so so when the developer is gonna go ahead and make sure this happens.
The developer, I'm not really involved in who's paying for what, whether it's the lot owner, I think it's a combination of the new lot owners are, and possibly the previous lot owners are sharing the cost to put a compliant, cul-de-sac.
And then did I hear you correct in saying then your staff will oversee the construction so that whatever is permitted, we make sure that that proper structure goes in?
Yeah, whatever was approved, which is actually 7 inches of, 7 inches of concrete and granular compaction. There's compaction specs, and we'll ask their contractor to provide that to us. We'll go out and look at the different levels and see how they're gonna pin it together. There's a few options where they can do the pinning. Dennis has given me DOT approved methods for that, and we'll make sure that everything's done according to what was approved on this plat.
I think that's good. I think, historically, Muscatine County, we've always had specifications for it, and I don't think we've ever followed up to make sure. And I think we have some neighborhoods out there that were probably not done to what was approved. And, we're not doing our jobs for the taxpayer. I think if they go understanding that it was built to our specification, and that if it wasn't done, that's a problem. So I think that's a good thing to do. Thank you.
So any questions on this plat? It's fairly straightforward. And obviously it was unanimously recommended for approval by the zoning commission.
Move.
A motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. This is a roll call vote. Scott? Aye. Nathan? Aye. I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Anything else there?
Just a couple project updates. At this point, the Terracon is scheduled to be here Wednesday morning to do the anchor testing on that wood deck structure on the courthouse. So we've been looking forward to that. We worked through all the little terms and condition issues from a few weeks ago. So I've got Jeff's signature and sent that to him last week, and they're scheduled to be here Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Also on Wednesday, we have some pre-construction, a bid tour for a couple projects that we issued bid documents for. These were some small projects that were approved when Mike came and talked to you guys a few weeks ago. There's a few door and access panels in the jail. They're gonna be going in to provide better access in existing areas to plumbing. So they're gonna have to cut some holes, in some concrete walls, put some access panels in for the maintenance staff. So bid documents have been out, and we've got a pre-project meeting where the bidders can come look at those. Then also, we issued bid documents for a paving project to replace the old sidewalk behind the deputies' quarters. That sidewalk was not replaced. We did the addition with the garage and metal panels. We noticed at the time that sidewalk was in really bad shape. It was something that there was money to do, and so we're gonna go ahead and get that done this year, replace some. The concrete is heaving and it's not good. So those bids have been issued, and contractors are gonna come look at that on Wednesday as well. The jail panel project has just been delayed. The contractor is still waiting on materials. Those panels are all pre-manufactured to spec, and he doesn't want to get started until he has receipt of all the materials. So they're waiting on some panels before he wants to mobilize.
Does he have any kind of an ETA on it?
We are past where we thought that he would have them, so we're checking with him about weekly now on updates, but he's still waiting on manufacturer for those.
And there isn't any, now we're past the hot weather season, so our compelling reason to get them on is gone by. Is there anything that would delay construction? He can do it through the winter?
Yeah, there's no site work or grade work required, so even if it gets cold, this is pretty straightforward stuff.
That's his problem.
There was one gas main that had to be extended out that went up the side of the building. We've already got that done. He moved in and got the plumbers and gas people done so that when they get the panels, they can start putting them on. It just had to be extended out to make room for the new insulated panels, so that part's done. So that's the project updates that we have right now.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions for Eric?
No, sir.
Comprehensive plan, where are we at in that?
So we have another steering committee this week. we'll be wrapping those up and should only have another one or two of those, and then we'll probably start, because we're starting to look at draft language, and then we'll have to start having public hearings with the zoning commission as we pull all this stuff together, the input from the steering committees and reviewing language. Next step will be public hearings with the zoning commission.
On that comprehensive plan, are you seeing some things that might change the direction of a lot of things we've done, or is it basically similar to the last one?
There's not been a lot. I was a little disappointed. I guess I shouldn't have been, because it's always tough to get large numbers of public input on these types of things. When we held one in West Liberty, that several of you were there, it happened to fall the day after they had a major windstorm, and there was massive amounts of cleanup and power outages in the city, so I think that hurt our attendance on that one. But there's been a lot of good discussion on future direction, and there's been a lot of pertinent things discussed as we've been holding these steering committee meetings. Just I've picked up on things, like the EMS concerns that we talked about. How does that correlate to where we want future residential and commercial development? And that was something that popped in my mind last week. Like, that's a real issue as more people live in farther, harder to reach areas that needs to be at least addressed somehow in comprehensive plan. We've talked about preservation of larger tracts of wooded land, that just because something has a low CSR doesn't mean that maybe we need to just rush to put housing there, because we need to preserve larger tracts of wildlife habitat in larger units, and not just start clearing timber because it's not crop ground. Those areas are ecologically sensitive with steep slopes and soil loss, that type of thing. So there has been a lot of good discussion that way. But a lot of it is the same, the input we've got from the public is a lot of past updates. What the highlights of Muscatine County are the same: rich agricultural, good recreation opportunities, and wanting to see both of those things maintained. Some of the things like Nora talked about, there's always at least a small interest in increasing trail access, recreational, healthy options for people. So a lot of the same, with a few other things of preserving habitat, for water quality, air quality, and certainly how do we continue to deal with the increased cost of road and bridge replacement as well, and balance that with where development should and could go in the counties.
I'll keep an eye on the Muscatine Comprehensive Plan and see how their community engagement goes versus ours. And they've tried a couple of different things, but so far, I've attended a couple of meetings, and I would say the engagement has been probably not even quite as good as we had in ours, so we'll see.
The one area that I was hoping we would get more community input on was just an overall, what's the view of these renewable energy projects? Where should they be located? We haven't had a lot of that. It'll come as no surprise to you that I think that there are two very divided camps on where renewable energy, whether it's solar or wind, should be located. And that's something that we will have to work through, maybe not totally at the comprehensive plan level, but certainly as we look at our moratorium coming up. I have been engaging with some other counties that are wrestling with the exact same thing. They're learning more and more about the impacts, particularly with large wind turbines. Apparently the DNR is starting to take a look at the impacts on private wells of some of these things. And so there is more and more information coming out, or more studies being done, that I think is going to help us make an educated decision on policy on these types of things, because there's a lot of just the sky is falling claims from both sides, and I think the challenge is to sort through what is real concern, what can we do, what really can't we do, and that type of thing. So
Yeah, I see we've got later on the agenda the discussion on the CO2 pipelines. There's a lot of things coming down the road that, really I don't know what the you want to kind of let the landowner decide in a lot of cases, but also you have to be concerned about the public good and the public's, it's like these large wind turbines, the infrastructure, the impacts on the infrastructure, which is on the public's dime, could be significant, so.
yeah, because, and I think it's going to be a year that there's going to be a lot of interest in that again. Yes, around here, we're going to see a pretty good, as Kurt would probably say, a pretty good harvest of crops. There's going to be a lot of bushels per acre. However, the price of corn is taking a real beating, and that, you know, there's gonna be a lot of farmers that are, again, looking for other options on how to make money on their land, and so it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a hot topic again, you know, going into the next year as they look at not meeting input costs, even with bountiful yields. That becomes a very attractive thing that we'll have to wrestle with the impacts of.
Yeah, and I know some of the projects have gone a little, we don't typically hear a lot about them just when they're, you know, from farmers generally, when landowners, when they generally come to us and say, hey, they're approaching us. But, you know, I was in a meeting a week or two ago and said that, you know, a lot of the speculative projects they felt was because of the plans of the Mid-American plant, you know, that, you know, because I remember hearing a number of years ago where they didn't think they were gonna go from coal to gas because it didn't have the life cycle. But I think that my understanding is maybe they've changed their position on that plant and what they may, what the long term, so be one for us to kind of keep an eye on, because I think the interconnectability of these projects is a critical factor in their development, whether they actually ever get past the kind of exploratory lease phase.
Yeah, interconnection abilities, access to the grid, and then certainly the federal incentives that can change depending on the administration. We're coming up to an election, things can change rapidly with some of the incentives, and
Yeah.
and so I think there's now this kind of
Pull back.
and see what happens, because it's very dependent on those types of policies.
In regards to our windmill, ordinance, I know that we put a hold on that ordinance to go, do some research on 4 or 5 different items. How's that coming along?
I'm gonna be honest, we may have to look at extending it a month or two to really have good language to consider, because I think there are some changes that need to be made, and we just didn't get a real large amount of public input through the comp plan process like I had hoped. But now I'm starting to work with more counties there's more and more counties that have updated their ordinance that'll provide really good information, because I think that's coming up like October, at the end, I think the end of October for the moratorium. So I don't wanna just take it off and still have work to do. If we need to extend it a month or two, that's probably the thing to do. So just kind of maybe preparing for that.
And you think you're probably another 2 weeks before you're into language in the
Oh,
plan?
well, yeah, I mean, the zoning commission, when it comes to the comprehensive plan, we have to publish well ahead. These have to be set public hearings. And so, and then before comp plan is finally adopted, you know, then there's public hearings that you folks hear on a recommended draft plan. And so, you know, we have to really decide if the two need to be really tied together, or if we know enough to just proceed separately with updating the wind ordinance and the comp plan.
Okay, thank you, Eric. All right, item number 7 is discussion possible action authorizing the chair to sign a purchase agreement for property adjacent to Deep Lakes Park. Anybody want to talk about this, or we just?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so we're still kind of finalizing how we want some of these things to end up, I guess. And so originally the board authorized me to sign the purchase agreement, and then we were thinking that it might be a good idea to have the supervisors sign the purchase agreement. And then the other thing to decide is who's gonna be holding the public hearing, whether you would like the conservation board to hold a public hearing, or whether you would, I think typically it's the supervisors that would hold the public hearing on that, so.
I don't think I have a concern either way. Do you, Nancy?
No, we'll work that out, but at this point, we're simply asking, the Realtor pointed out to us that the last property we bought, the board also signed off on it, since technically the county owns the property. And so we're just asking for authorization for Jeff to sign the purchase agreement that we have in place.
Yeah, I think that's consistent with transfers we've seen in
Yeah.
the past. I think that's what we did when we got that property originally and everything. So I'd look for a motion. Tom, or- Have a motion by Nathan?
Second.
Second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 8 is discussion and possible direction regarding CO2 pipelines, eminent domain issues with Danny Chick. I think Danny was responding to some emails we've seen from other counties,
Right.
a number of counties, so.
So, just for a little history on the pipeline, for those that may not know in the room or whoever may be watching. Summit Carbon Solutions is wanting to put a pipeline in that would transport liquid carbon dioxide from ethanol plants around Iowa. They would disperse that carbon dioxide in North Dakota. Pipeline.
Pump it underground.
Yes. The pipeline would be about 2,500 miles long. 700 of those miles would be in Iowa. They say they've got agreements with 57 ethanol plants. That's where they'll capture most of the carbon dioxide from. And they say they've locked up 75% of the landowners that have agreed to allow the pipeline onto their property. They plan on starting construction in 2026, so we still got some time. So that's kind of what is happening out there. Now, this has been a hot topic going around for quite a while on the intimate domain on if a landowner did not want to allow that pipeline onto their property. Because typically intimate domain roads, airports, maybe things like that. This isn't something that would serve the public like those other items, so it's a hot topic throughout the state. It did go through legislation at Iowa, and the House passed it. It got held up in the Senate.
Okay.
So originally I was thinking it made it through, but it did not. So it's held up in the Senate. Talking to Mark Laughlin, when they go back into session in January, it's kind of really unknown if they'll go forward with new legislation to hold that. They in that legislation, they say if 90% of the land is locked up, that if 10% is left, if they're within the 10% threshold, they could apply intimate domain to them 10%. To me personally, since it's not a really public service, I don't even personally agree with the 10%, but that's where the state's at. So when the Senate held this up, it got turned over to the Iowa Utility Board. The Iowa Utility Board, to my understanding, is going to allow intimate domain for this to go in without any state legislation. 40 senators, state senators and congressmen have joined into, I believe, a lawsuit against the utility board. And so it's kind of all up in the air there. So Bremer County in Iowa, they crafted a resolution to send to the Iowa Utility Board to not allow intimate domain in their
Within
county.
their jurisdiction.
In their county. And several other counties have signed on, and I'm not sure if they signed on or created their own resolution. But, so they're trying to send a message to the utility board that they're not happy with it, they don't want it in our county. Although that's a great first step, and maybe we should do that, whatever the board decides, if we should create our own resolution, which there's a copy here, it's in that email I sent you, Jim. So I don't know if it's as easy as signing on to theirs, if that's what the board decides, or if we gotta create our own. But even though that's a good first step, an ordinance, if this board would consider moving forward with an ordinance to not allow intimate domain for the CO2 pipeline in Muscatine County, it would carry much more weight. Now, there may be a point that's gonna get, a state law would be implemented, and that would be null and void on our ordinance, but it's really up in the air if the state law will ever get through the whole process and the governor assign the bill.
Are you saying no eminent domain at all, or if they get 90%?
That would have to be the decision of the board. Me personally, I'm none at all because of the the type of project it is. I don't think it serves the public, so I'm as no intimate domain. Maybe the board's at 90. I don't know where the board would be.
Well, I see a couple of things here. One, this is a private for-profit enterprise that's doing something for gain. And their desire, if they can't get, is to use the eminent domain process to take rights from landowners. I have a big problem with that, because I'm not sure that this is, I mean, eminent domain to me is something that should be avoided at all costs. I get, you know, the other is, you know, if you had a power line that was critical to the public, you know, and you had one farm, you wouldn't want them to be able to
That's a different
stop a
story.
big, you know, I mean, I get that, but also, you know, this is a, you know, and a lot of utility companies are, well, they're different, right? I mean, this isn't a utility. To my understanding, it's not regulated as a utility, and I've read up all like, and, you know, fortunately, I think we've been fortunate that it's not, we haven't heard any proposal within Muscatine County. But I know they're in Clinton, cause I've talked to the Clinton supervisor, so that this is an issue very close to us. And I would think, Jim, even if we had an ordinance, state legislation could trump that? Okay.
Would our resolution to do that have any effect legally whatsoever? So it'd just be like a.
It's just a
protest.
statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about the resolution. I mean, we can do it if the board decides. Really, there's two issues that we gotta decide if we wanna move forward for, or have Jim look into it. Do we sign on to the resolution, or do we create our own, and does that carry any value except us? And maybe it sends a message to them that they got all these counties that this pipeline would go through, that maybe the utilities board would say, yeah, I guess a lot of people are against that, so maybe they wouldn't allow it. So we gotta decide if there's any weight with the resolution, and that's what we wanna do. And then, you know, the second item, we gotta decide, are we interested in creating an ordinance at some level to not allow it, or only allow it if there's a
And my
certain
understanding
threshold.
is the Public Utilities is a border commission, I don't know which it is. You know, their ruling statement, whatever, says they would allow Summit Carbon Solutions to use the eminent domain process, correct?
Yeah.
They're not objecting to
Basically,
it.
it's just using the definition that's in place already of the eminent domain and the power that exists under that statute, so.
But it's the power conferred on the utility board by statute, so they're basically they're not just not objecting to it, they're facilitating it. And it looks like they've already decided to do that. To me, it's like one of those done deals. I understand, and I certainly agree with you guys on I don't like eminent domain. What's the point of doing it? Just to throw them the finger? Or
So
what
are you
do
talking
we
about
gain
the
by it?
are you talking about the
I'm
resolution?
talking about either one, because in either
Well-
case, it has no legal effect.
Well, there's no state law at this point that would allow eminent domain, so the utility board couldn't trump our ordinance. If we
Yeah.
created an ordinance, they couldn't trump it, could they?
Yeah,
Because
I'm
there's
pretty
no
sure
law
they
in
can.
place.
Their law comes from Iowa Codes chapters 4676A, 478, 479, 479B. I haven't read those, but the state law says they can do it. Nothing we say matters.
I guess I'm under the assumption that state law currently doesn't say they could do it, since there's not a law in place. And you may be right, but the way I believe it, there's no state law that allows it at this point.
The argument might be, Danny, over whether or not it's a public purpose.
Yeah, I mean,
Under
that's,
the statute, and that's a matter of opinion.
yeah.
Yeah.
So. I
And they've
think-
ruled
I
for-
think they can argue the law allows it, and people can argue that it doesn't, but
What-
yeah.
So I guess if you're right, or that's the case, or maybe we have Jim, if the board's in consensus of that, have Jim look into it to see if we created an ordinance, if it would hold any weight. If it doesn't hold any weight, I guess it's a waste of
I
time.
think you're already saying it doesn't, because the eminent domain, you say the Public Utilities Commission has the right to approve the use of eminent domain per statute. We have an eminent domain statute. So if people want to protest the use of it in a particular instance, they would have to challenge whether the use meets this criteria established in the statute.
Yeah, this came up a year ago, maybe.
Yeah, it's been going on for a
I
year.
looked at it at that point, and I remember saying, I mean, I don't think the eminent domain statute's broken. And I think it's there, it exists, and there's proper procedure and protection for everybody, and, you know, at the end of the day, not everybody is going to agree. But I can't perceive that 99 counties are gonna start directing the traffic of the state as it comes to those sorts of things. So that's, you know, I guess I don't know that it's of any value. I think you can make the statement by way of resolution if that's what you wanna do, but you know, at the end of the day, we've elected people who go down to the state and make those decisions on our behalf. And whatever the decision of the majority is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I completely agree. I don't wanna waste anybody's time on a gesture that's futile. I would be fine with a letter to like the Iowa Utilities Board and the governor saying we oppose the use of eminent domain for, you know, the advancement of private enterprise. Something like that, I'd be fine with. But I don't wanna have you take a single second of your time if it's gonna accomplish nothing.
I mean, it's basically a statement.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it more appropriate would be to our legislative
Yeah, and
contingency.
maybe that's too.
A letter that goes to our legislative contingency that we believe that, you know, we understand this issue's out there. We think that, you know, use of eminent domain to further a private, is not an appropriate use. And, unless they can prove public interest, you know, public good, public interest, I don't know how the statute reads, but I'm sure, you know, it'll be a long, drawn-out legal battle, I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah.
And the question is if it were to raise its head in Muscatine County, you know, would the county participate in that battle? I don't know. You know, I'd have to look at the specific, because, you know, that's always money, right? And the question is, you know, even if these counties that are affected are gonna mount a legal challenge, you know, are they gonna ask us for money to do that? I don't know, you know.
I mean, to me, a legal challenge seems a long shot, shall we say, to this. I would imagine there's some pretty serious deference given to the IUB's findings, and this is like spitting in the wind if we spend anything on it. I'm happy to express our opinion to our legislators, but they're the only ones who have any power over this.
Let me ask this question. If 100% of the landowners are in agreement to allow this to happen, is there any laws, regulations that would prohibit it from being done on a statewide issue? No. Okay.
It's their land, it's their call.
Okay.
This is the way it's crafted, is if they procure 90% of the permissions necessary, are we gonna let 10% hold out the 90%? And that's
My question, Jim, was is this process even viable for an independent investor to do this project is the question I have, with everything that comes to mind of, I mean, there's just a whole lot of things that can go wrong, just like with anything. And then the question that follows up after that is, to get from point A to point B, why is there a block of landowners that go X amount of miles each direction that prohibit it to run around that, to be able to pick up those permission properties? To be able to do that, maybe that's not financially feasible to the project. I don't know, but I'm just having a hard time believing that I don't know what the revenue is to the landowner per, I don't know how they do this, I assume would be running foot, would be the payment to do this. It just seems to me they're not offering enough money.
These are underground.
Maybe I'm incorrect.
These are underground.
Right.
Even if it goes forward, there's still some safety concerns that will have to be addressed for the public. There's one county in Iowa, I can't recall which county it is, but that pipeline apparently would go through a very low-lying area. If there was a rupture, they said there's several hundred or several thousand people that live in that low-lying area. They think that the carbon dioxide could settle in that area. So if it ruptured in the middle of the night, it's possible that none of them could wake up the next day. So there's some challenges out there of the safety of it too if there's a rupture.
Now, would we have, Eric, setbacks that would be in place?
Currently, we don't list it as a regulated land use. I know there's been discussions amongst my counterparts who had some similar concerns. Is there an avenue to try to address it in your zoning or land use regulations that gets you to, that some have to decide whether 335, which gives, home rule zoning authority, will that trump some of the eminent domain? But it sounds like if it's recognized as utility, there's a lot of utilities that up to code already allows them, no matter what your local land use regulation says, they're basically exempt from that currently. So that's where we're at. We can write all the land use regulations. I think one of the concerns that I've seen as well, and you might want to talk to Chris Jasper about it, was just the safety things. A lot of your rural departments, as these things go in, aren't necessarily knowledgeable on how to deal with potential leaks and ruptures, and so there's the eminent domain private land right, and there's the public safety issue as well as these things move forward. We don't currently regulate them. It sounds like it might be kind of a futile effort to try to adopt specific zoning regulations that use chapter 335. They decide it's a public.
Because they're considering it as a utility,
If,
basically.
I don't know that they're quite there yet, but it sounds like that's the angle that's, I'm not intimately involved in it, but that's probably the angle they're approaching, so that none of the counties can hurry up and adopt local land use regulations.
Well, I think that at a minimum, I would want to make our legislative contingency aware that we have grave concerns about this. One, the use of eminent domain. Two, the consideration for safety, public safety, and our ability to manage that. If it is a utility, utilities bear a big burden too on public safety. Like when they do things, they have some pretty high hurdles, and hopefully this group would have the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's tens of thousands of miles of pipelines across the country, so,
Crazy.
I mean, the process is, relatively safe, not saying there's nothing that's 100% sure, but, that's not a huge concern for me that you're gonna have ruptures, explosions and so on. I think that technology's time tested on building pipelines, but, it's just a matter of not being able to enforce eminent domain and for the individual operation to come up with a way to secure the necessary easements and so on to do this. Like I said, they gotta offer more money.
It sounds like an ordinance isn't gonna work, we just have to decide if we wanna have that
We
resolution.
want to make a statement or something, or send a.
And do we
you
make
wanna
that
do
to
it-
our state legislations, or do we wanna send that to the utility board, or do we wanna do nothing?
Because I think we all know that when they put any type of pipeline through any type of terrain, structure, agricultural ground, it's an impact, and it's a forever impact on crop production ground,
Yeah.
so.
So I believe on this, there was some controversy too, because they were wanting to run it in right of way as well in some areas. I ran down that rabbit hole for a while, and all I could do is I'm thankful I'm not having to deal with it directly in Muscatine County, because I believe there were some counties where they're proposing to go in the right of way, which adds a whole nother level of concern for us as well.
Maybe it's as easy as if the board is in agreement, maybe it's just as easy to ask if we can sign on to that. If it's as easy as telling them we could sign on to their resolution, then maybe that's all we need to do.
So what does their resolution say?
Well,
Yeah, it's
it's
three
quite
pages.
lengthy, Nathan.
This basically says we don't think
That's a lot of
a
lawyer stuff. You could
private
probably-
company
I'd
should be
rather
able to
just
use
send
it.
a letter to the people who can do something about it, rather than just flip the finger in the wind.
Okay.
sent to the legislators.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our legislative contingency. Would
The
that
board
be?
obviously doesn't give a rat's rear end about, you know, what the counties have to say, so.
Yeah, we don't have a voice at the, well, we do at the utility board. We could send something to carbon to them, but.
Yeah, I don't mind carbon copying it, but, you know, taking an official action, you know, it's kinda like with your kids, you carry out, you make a threat or you make a statement you're not willing to, or you can't make any action on, it seems stupid to me.
Okay.
But I'm happy to send a letter, a strongly worded letter even. Cause I know that's all the rage in diplomatic circles.
I guess as your zoning and land use administrator, I would support
I'm
that.
fine with that.
I get very afraid of anything where we start losing any kind of local control in terms like eminent domain. There was already a bill, it didn't make it through this last time, with statewide standards for like wind energy. You know, are those next?
Yeah.
You know, green energy projects, we certainly don't want any more traction to going around local control, whether it's renewable energy or pipelines. Some are already there, maybe headed that way, but I would support objecting to something that looks more like private industry and questioning where the public interest is. Just in my personal opinion, yeah, should be an absolute last resort.
Okay, I'm okay with
Is that, do we have a consensus on that? We'll draft some kind of a letter
Yep.
to state our objections to, one, the private, I think that's, let's talk, one, I think is usurping, you know, local control. Two is, private for-profit enterprise utilizing the eminent domain process is concerning to me. Cause now you put, you know, somebody has more power over somebody, you know, it's like you're putting somebody in a trumping position. I don't know how you make that choice. Who has the you know, define the public good. I think that's our concern is, you know, how do you define the public good?
Absolutely.
Because I think to your point, Eric, policy could change at the drop of a hat. And, you know, all of a sudden, you know, I mean, I read this, what they're doing, they're pumping the CO2 deep underground. It's like, okay, what's that do? Does it not ultimately get released again? I don't know, you know, I guess I did read they found a microbe in a deep underground research lab that crystallizes CO2, so I don't know, maybe that's what they're doing, I don't know. Well beyond my technical knowledge, so, okay.
Okay.
All right, item number is eight. Eight is discussion of possible action to approve the minutes of the September 9th, 2024 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Nathan and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Correspondence, Scott, did you have any correspondence?
I had one, and that a resident called me about, water testing, and, I pointed them towards Eric's office to give them a call. And, I believe that's what happened, and that's all I have.
Anything?
I did not.
I had nothing to note.
I had nothing.
Dan? Kurt?
No.
Okay, committee reports, Kurt?
I had We Lead board meeting last week, excuse me,
Danny?
last Thursday.
September 10th, Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee. That's all I had.
I had no committee reports last week.
Thanks.
And I have none.
And Scott. Okay, got all that, Peggy?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, item 12, items with the administration office. Discussion and possible action to approve resolution 09/16/2402, abating taxes on a parcel owned by Muscatine County.
Yeah, this is the 2554 Pettibone Avenue property that was purchased. Based on the timing of the purchase, half a year's of taxes were dealt with at the closing of the property. The other half would be our responsibility to pay. And so what we typically do is abate those taxes. And then going forward for the next tax year,
They'll be
it's
on-
it's exempt. Yep.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'd move.
A motion by Scott,
Second.
second by Kurt. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Anything else, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
Item 13 is receive comments from county employees, and county employees want to address the board. Katie?
Okay, I just have two other things. One, I'm looking at applying for a Roy J. Carver Trust grant, and that'll be coming up here kind of on short notice. My board's gonna be talking about it tonight at our meeting. It would be to improve our life support system for our aquarium, so redoing a lot of the filtration that we have down in the basement. It's 20 years old and we're starting to see some problems. We aren't able to buy the replacement parts, so we're having to try to retrofit stuff. And so they're potentially interested in funding that project so that we can get that up and running. And so I didn't know if I needed approval from this board as well as my board. So I just wanted to let you know that that was kind of in the works. And then the other thing, I've been in discussions with Adam Reisbeck from the Muscatine Police Department, and he is very interested in doing a triathlon based out of Deep Lakes Park. That would be in August 2nd of next year. And so we're kind of in discussions with that. He's coming to the Conservation Board meeting tonight also to talk about that. They're looking at it being very large, qualifying for people that do triathlons on like a state and national basis. And so it would probably shut down the park for a day or part of a day while that would be going on. And it would require swimming, bike riding, and then racing. And so they've got all of the EMS and support and police department behind them to be able to block off roads as needed and all that type of stuff. And so it would potentially impact Stewart Road for a period of time. And so if anybody's interested in kind of working with us on a committee, assuming that the board approves that tonight at the meeting, that's something that's kind of in the works for next year. Questions about that? Maybe you can get Adam to come in and talk about it more, because he's kind of the driver in this, so.
Oh, yeah, those,
I'll get your meeting tonight, so I'm interested in listening to what he has to say and
Yeah.
how large a scope this is, because I don't run many of those myself.
they're not as popular as they used to be, but, you know, they'll draw a large crowd of people. You'll be surprised at how many people, it's a whole culture that does it. I did them for a number of years, you may never believe it, but I used to do it, travel all over and do them, but,
He's talking maybe 300 to 500
Yeah.
racers, which means, you
Yeah.
know, then you'd have twice that many people come in to watch and observe, and bringing in a lot of stuff for the families and stuff to do. It would be a really big event for Muscatine, bring a lot of people into our community, so
well,
it'd
they
be
have
huge.
I think Scott County Park, or not Scott County, Westlake Park does,
Westlake.
they do one there and have for a number of years. It's been a very successful event. And it'll help showcase the park, I think, so I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
It'd be an annual event going forward, right? Is that what they
Right.
talked
yeah, it would
about?
be an annual thing, yep.
And you gotta be certified with them or something to be for they can actually qualify for the next, yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yep, so that's all I have for now.
On the Carver Trust grant, I don't think, does the Conservation Board?
The typically what we'd like to do is if the Conservation Board approves going forward with the grant, approve the grant application, we'd like to have them come here and just have you guys affirm it. It's just for accounting purposes, it documents that the board's aware
of the
of money
grant
that's
and-
gonna run through our budget.
Yeah, yeah, cause it probably might need a budget amendment or some other things at some point. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, good.
okay.
Thank you, Katie. Anybody else want to address the board? Item 14 is to receive comments from public. Any members of the public wishing to address the board, an issue not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, do we want to take a recess? You want to go right? We got Jim, you don't have court this morning, huh?
Already, and we'll pass that.
Passed it, okay.
Didn't have any.
Okay, item number 15 is a non-public session pursuant to chapter 20.173 Code of Iowa to discuss strategy in union negotiations. So this will,
I will move.
you have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
All right.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Okay. So we're leaving public session.